Aloha and welcome to the Microbial Secret Society, where David and I dive deep into the microbial realm and initiate you into the Microbial Secret Society. So enjoy our podcast. The first hour is always free, and the second hour is only available to members at microbialsecret.org. So thank you, and let's begin.
Okay, 3, 2, 1. We're live.
Aloha, and we're live on another episode of the Microbial Secret Society podcast.
Yeah, so we're here kind of in the morning. Usually we record these episodes in the afternoon, so hopefully we got our youthful energy and not so exhausted on our episodes, because I've been feeling last couple ones we did, it's like the end of a day after teaching for like 4 hours and then being with a whole bunch of people and then trying to record a podcast has been somewhat challenging.
So you like the morning opportunity maybe better to have a little bit more vibrancy and energy.
We'll see, bro. We're gonna big it up.
Yeah, we're gonna check it out. I mean, I don't know. At one point you mentioned how, like, I don't know what the statistic was, but you said like the Big Island is growing so fast that like the roads have to multiply by X amount or else we're not going to be able to sustain it. And I was like, oh, that's not true. Like living in Puna where there's not much traffic and then cruising to Hilo today and like a drive that would have taken 30 minutes or 40 minutes max took about an hour and a half. So I definitely, yeah, there's definitely there's a lot of people in the small lanes. So
yeah, so that's a new concept for you. Is this morning now you got a different morning commute? Everybody trying to go from the jungle into the city to work for their work day to earn their money and to buy their food and then go back to the jungle to enjoy the pristineness of it. But I think the mathematical formula you were talking about is when I talk about exponential growth.
mm-hmm.
And how that kind of works with the roads is that Hawaii was growing at like 30% or like above 20%, which if you're growing at 7% growth rate, you double every 10 years. So you can kind of take that math to like 7% to 20%, which is roughly 3 times more than that. So you take that 10 years that we have, that would be your doubling period for 7% growth, and you say, well, we're going to divide that by 3. So it's roughly every, 3 times 3 is 9. So it's every 3.5 years, Hawaii is going to double in this doubling number. Because, following the math, you could actually do the mathematical formulas. But just understanding that the population is going to double every 5 years or so, roughly, which means that every 5 years, there's going to be twice as many cars. So 5 years ago when we thought, oh, there's a lot of cars, in 5 years there's going to be twice as many. 5 years from now, there's going to be twice as many as there are today. So where, you came through and you waited in traffic, potentially you're going to have to wait 5 times longer in traffic. Unless they build more roads or widen the roads. But widening the roads or building more roads is a linear relationship, whereas the population growth is an exponential relationship.
Is there any way to make more roads exponentially?
No, because that would mean that every person that builds a house would have to like kind of build their own road.
Take care of their road or something.
Yeah,
in a sense.
Yeah, and then we all kind of use these major like backbone roads, like we all use like Highway 11 to get here, and so you can't build like another highway next to it. I mean, you could, and you can, but as your population doubles, you're going to have to continue. And so what this means is 5 years from now, we're going to have to double the roads. 10 years from now, we're going to have to quadruple the roads. 15 years from now, we're going to have 8 times as many roads to stay up with current population growth. So only 15 years, we're going to have 8 times as many roads to keep the traffic as it is today, like on those 8 roads.
Is that even possible?
Well, that's what they call the limits to growth. Like, have you ever heard of Malthus? He's a Malthusian. It's a he was a philosopher that talked about, like the limits of the earth are limited, the resources of the earth are limited, and that if we continue to grow, we'll use them all. And he predicted. He was kind of like the first 2012 guy that was like, oh, the world's gonna end, all this stuff, and here we are today, far beyond his prediction of when, a human population doubling, just like I'm talking now. There's limits to growth, like other things are gonna happen. Like, not all those people are gonna move to Hawaii. There's other land restrictions before our roads have to get eight times as much in 15 years. Something's going to happen in between there, like the economy change, whatever shifts.
Mm-hmm. So there's like limits to exponential growth, and there's other external factors that play a role in basically the expansion and the kind of the change of what's going to happen in Hawaii, not just based on solely the population. So you kind of came back from a recent trip to Washington D.C., which I feel like deals with like change and growth and these different things. Would you be willing to kind of share about that at all?
Yeah. Well, so yeah, to transition out of the exponential theory back to going to Washington D.C. Whew, man. Yeah. The belly of the beast, man. In terms of I can see, one of my main conclusions I had coming back after spending 5 days in Washington D.C. was that I sat on the front porch, like stoop, of the Airbnb I was staying at, and I watched all these people run by me, like people going and going and going. And and my takeaway was that we've lost porch culture, where people just hang out on the porch and talk story, and your neighbors come in by and you say, what's up? And you kind of find out about the day.
Mm-hmm.
And we transitioned into like screen culture, where all of us are addicted to like a smartphone. And even as we're walking down the street, we're like, oh, I hope this fucker doesn't talk to me because I want to look at my phone and be in my own Instagram world and get my likes here, versus having interaction on the, as we walk by. And that's more of like porch culture, where you're like, someone's walking by your porch, you say, hey, how's it going? Oh, you want some, lemonade or whatever, and there's hundreds of people walking by. So it's not possible to interact with everyone to that level of detail. But we're now all in screen culture, where we all come at the end of the day and we walk into our homes and we flip on a TV screen, or we open our phone on the toilet, or we go into like our virtual worlds. And I think I felt this disconnect in culture, that I didn't really connect with people because I'm only in my own screen zone, because we're in screen culture. But as I sat on the front porch of this place, I was like kind of bringing porch culture back. But people were like, what is this guy doing on the front porch? Like, and kind of looking at, because no one else sits out there. No one else like enjoys the evening and kind of chats with each other, and we're all too busy going, and I think it's disconnected us. And I saw that come back into like the Capitol, and how we interact with our representatives. It's more of this individual than like a community. Like you're in closed offices. We're like in that screen, versus like porch culture, where it's like, come to my office and we'll have a meeting, and we all got these issues. And anyway, I felt this isolation in America, to summarize.
So you observe through your time on the Airbnb that maybe the culture there is a little bit more fast paced
Mhm.
and less personal in the sense, like physical, like human to human connection
Yeah.
due to being raised in like a screen generation, and then when you met with Congress people, if it felt like maybe it, it was a little harder to like have conversations as like a community, because it felt like maybe you were like one on one with these people or in these like separate buildings or spaces or offices, but you know, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, feeling the everyone there lobbying for a special interest. Like most of us are like, oh, we want to get special interests out of government, yet we're there lobbying to try to get, particular favors or money or whatever sent our way towards a noble cause, right? Towards the farmers' union. But so is every other cause that's there. They're noble, but they're trying to get these special interests. Like we're trying to get some of our money back pointed at our organization, and it's not it doesn't, from my perspective, it doesn't appear to be helping us all. It's kind of like the loudest voice or the person who lobbies the most, or I'm not really sure how the Washington works. It seems like this one bill we were discussing for farmers union is the what they call USMCA, which
USMCA.
yeah, which is to replace NAFTA, which was the North American Free Trade Agreement, and USMCA stands for United States Mexico Canada Agreement. USMCA. It's an acronym for all those countries like that together. And what it is it's a trade bill, so they can exploit people in different ways and, make economies work. And that's part of it is we wanted the human rights parts added to that. So that if I, like one example they gave was there's a company in Michigan making tires. They open a plant in Mexico and they have to pay their workers $20 an hour in Michigan. They open a plant in Mexico. They're able to pay their workers $2 a day or something like two, less than $5 a day. And so then they're importing those same tires back into the United States. And now instead of the company, they didn't have to change their price. They just undermined the labor and paid the labor way less. $5 instead of $20 an hour, $5 a day. Then they bring those tires back, and now that money they saved on the labor exploitation is now profit for the company. And so what they're trying to do with these bills, or what are we want to add, human rights parts to this. So like if you're not paying your workers in Mexico what you would pay them in America, then there has to be some sort of tariff to the um to make that so it's not just exploitation of workers.
To create a system that's more balanced and people are mutually compensated for their time and energy, and there's not like people taking advantage of others because of looser like labor laws and stuff in foreign countries.
Yeah, and for whatever reason those are in those foreign countries. I don't know why Mexico wouldn't, I guess it's up to the Mexicans to say, hey, we're not going to work at your tire factory until you pay us a comparable wage. But that's getting to the whole new world order and like the globe, and like forever, for at least for the past 200 years, the Western models, or longer, 600 years, it's gone on this Western model of exploitation of like cheap slave labor elsewhere to bring the goods.
And that's not really sustainable.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, yeah.
In the long run, at least.
Well, the wages are rising elsewhere. one interesting thing I've noticed here in Hawaii is when I go up to the national park, the Volcanoes National Park, the tourists are now Chinese and Indian.
As opposed to,
They used to be European, American. There's some Russians up there, but it's much more countries that we would consider like India is more like third world, and China's more third world, whereas like European countries are more like first world.
mm-hmm.
And it used to be more first world tourists, but now it's Chinese and Indians are the predominant tourists that I see up there.
And you believe that's due to?
The change in the economies, and how I was saying we go to these countries and we exploit them for cheap labor, like China for since the 90s until like 2012 was like just cheap labor, slave shops kind of thing. And now their labor standards have risen. The people, are charging more of a fair wage. Most of the goods produced in China are now going back into China. Whereas before they used to just produce goods and send it to America.
Mm-hmm.
Now the demand, because wages have risen, people can afford the same microwave that would have just been sent to America is now going into China.
But ultimately, like, wouldn't it be cheaper in China if you're gonna make something? You know.
No, the cheapest place to buy things is America, because it comes down to our money monopoly, our guns that protect oil. And production of oil is how we create cheap goods around the world for America. So in America, we say oil has to be traded in dollars. And America, we just go and we say, oh, how many dollars is this? And then we just run our printing press to say, oh, it's $10. Okay, we'll print $10 and then we'll buy it. Great. If you're France and you say, how much is this oil? And we say it's $10. Then you go to America and you say, hey, how can I get $10 from you? Because you can't run your printing press because you're France and we have the monopoly on the printing press. So you have to say, okay, well, we'll sell you these chairs for $10. And we go, great. And we just print $10 and we give it to you. And now we got chairs. And now you go buy that oil. And now you can produce something else. And so we control the entire global thing by having the guns and oil, and setting that you have to buy oil in United States dollars. And we can just print that money. Whereas every other country, like if you want it, you got to buy something from America, or sell something to America.
Really? That's like a fact that you can only buy oil in US dollars?
Yeah. Unless you domestically produce it, right? If you like if I'm Brazil and I domestically produce my own oil, then sure, I can just have that oil. But every other country, you have to have oil has to be traded in US dollars.
But that's so strange because doesn't the oil not come from here for the most part?
Well, but it comes from Texas and Saudi Arabia and like the Red Sea, and those are the places we own pretty militarily. Like the King Saud of the Saudi Arabias, they have this thing with Trump right now about him sending our military out and whatever. But those guys are that's what the wars in the Middle East are over, because Saddam Hussein was going to trade in euros. He was going to say that's what the Gulf War was about. That's why Bush took him out. He was saying to those guys, he was saying, look, I don't want to trade in dollars anymore. I'll trade in the euro. And now that would mean America would have to go and produce stuff, sell it to Euro, like Europe, whoever's using the euro, get euros and then buy oil from Iraq, who's a fairly large producer in the game, although not as big as the Saudis. Is this new to you?
A little bit. I mean, yeah, a little bit new.
I mean, because that's why goods and services are so cheap in America. That's why Americans, but it's shifting, it's changing.
it's shifting and changing to something else because the standard and quality of care is going up internationally?
Well, I mean, we are. It's like where the way I presented it just there. I presented it like we print it all the time. We just print new money. It's not always true. We don't just always print every new dollar. There are trade deficits and different trade exchanges that we do. Because if we just printed it any time, the world would revolt. So we use systems where we use like quantitative easing or like these different monetary policies that the Federal Reserve puts out. So we don't just print everything, but in the last between 2008 and today, the last 10 years, we've printed like 8 times the amount of money that was in the world before, at least. So for every dollar you have, there's 8 more dollars that are competing for the same amount of goods and services.
That just makes me think about Bitcoin and how you can't create more of it. And there's like 21 million or whatever it is.
Yeah, yeah. I mean that's kind of like a gold standard
Yeah.
type
But
of
but
money.
that's not the first time that a world leader has like claimed that they wanted to be backed by a different type of currency and then was assassinated. Like Muammar Gaddafi, who literally he wanted to switch to the gold standard, and he found primary water and was giving like free water to people in the Sahara Desert. And then he NATO. So that's NATO. Is NATO different than what we were talking about earlier, or is that what we were talking about NAFTA?
Yeah, NATO is the North American Treaty
Treaty.
Organization.
Okay.
It's
Okay. So that's a little bit different than.
came out of the Cold War.
So do you feel like your time in DC was beneficial and you were able to inoculate some people or find out anyone interesting was or is like a member of the secret society already?
Well, yeah. I mean, I can tell you it's like the grand mystery of my life. It was like an unfolding, right? To just go and to be invited into the Capitol and to be in this power space and to like understand the world as vibrations and energies and to like be there and synchronize with that. Hopefully, was it beneficial in a good way for the union? I think so. Um, it, building those relationships takes time, and I got to see more of how it functions. And when I say it, I'm referring to like the machine. You hear people talk about the machine or rage against the machine. And it's this thing that's there that is very out of touch and not serving the people in any meaningful way, nor could it. But what you can do with it is you can get these special interests answered. And if you have some really good special interests that you were able to put forward, then you could get some really cool initiatives going. Like imagine these politicians write legislation into or make an appropriation for the farm apprentice mentorship program that the farmers union's putting forward. So that means the idea where what we've talked about previously, where we called it the surf program, where it's instead of woofing, you come and you get a basic training into farm apprentice mentorship, and then you go to these different after your basic training, which lasts however many weeks we deem necessary to get a basic training, past certain metrics of skill sets, then you go to these different farm apprentice sites around the island, and you can check the website to see which places have openings. And imagine that was well funded as like a seed startup, saying, okay, we want to do this, and what we want to do is take this vision, which what I learned talking with a few of the folks is really to have a business plan as if it's a private business, and to just go get your special interest here, which probably would serve the people's good. But imagine that farm apprentice mentorship was given the support from that level.
What kind of support would that look like? Like what? Yeah, what kind of funding is needed to like create that infrastructure? Like where would those resources go? Is my kind of question for to establish that program.
Well, so I mean, I see, like, my my ultimate answer to all this is like just to kind of dismantle that stuff and to not tax us anymore, and just to let us keep our money, and to go libertarian, laissez-faire, like just stop taxing us and just enforce contracts, and like, and help us defend for the greater good.
What Bitcoin again? Smart contracts, right?
Well, but to come back to this, and to come back to the machine and the way it is established, and the way, without like saying, okay, let's just get rid of it, but instead to work within it. I could see something where, um, similar to how they want to have free college tuition, and these ideas are coming up, or there's student loans for education, um, and they do have loans for farmers and things, and they do have like these USDA programs, but for some reason I don't feel like that. Like, I haven't necessarily taken advantage of them. I don't know if you have.
Mm-mm.
And I know they put out all this stuff like the Equip program through NRCS, but what I could see is like a little bit of a farmer stipend program, and to help, like in Korea, they actually pay their farmers a stipend,
Really?
because they know that like they make so much money with Samsung and the high tech stuff. This kind of goes almost like Andrew Yang on this, where like they're making so much money on high tech stuff that they subsidize their farmers. So they say, okay, you're a farmer, you grow rice. I mean, I guess similar to what we do with corn subsidies, but in a way where it's like it transitions us to regenerative agriculture, and it gives a path forward for for young farmers. And I think it needs the other two parts of this, which are the other two farmers union initiatives, which are food hubs, and then land trusts. So getting people onto land, and the food hub. Like as you help farmers out with a stipend, and then you have these food hubs, and we're able to switch production from very far away supply lines to very localized, resilient domestics food production systems. That those things, and you get farmers onto land, so that the farmers, we can kind of get people where they're growing. That those three things together would be a way, like, that if there was supported that way, it'd be a quick way to transition back to like a, carbon neutral, like climate change worthy, because I feel like those farmers, that lifestyle is more harmonious with our microorganisms.
Mm. So creating like a farmer stipend program that supports farmers, and then also having local food hubs for people and growers and farmers to sell, and then for consumers to buy produce in restaurants and stuff like that. And yeah, I saw that's happening now in Kohala with their hub. You can purchase veggies and fruits and stuff from there today, which would be local.
Yeah. Well, the thing I noticed about the farming there, and the farming that's in front of the legislature, is that it's not like what we're experiencing here in Hawaii. There, it's like commodity agriculture. They're worried about like thousands of acres of grains and stuff, and soy and corn, and
these commodity type of crops. And so I don't know, I'm talking about all this stuff, and it's really like a radical different way of living.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if people are ready for that. I mean, I still think another great thing to do would be to put IMOs, like some sort of, the legislature could pass something where it could say, like, we got to do biological soil testing, and you have to have more biology, or this adequate threshold of biology in your soil, to get these, to get the subsidies. Like, if you're doing farming where you're degrading the soil, then we're not going to subsidize that anymore. You can still farm. We're not going to fine you or whatever, but we're not going to give you the same corn subsidy.
Well, how does that switch? Because like typically in the past, the subsidies were from like through the government, but were like lobbied by like Monsanto or Bayer, these other chemical ag companies, where they're actually kind of promoting the chem ag in a sense.
Yeah, yeah. So I mean, you just have to have a new lobby. That's what we were there doing, the farmers union lobby.
So just a new lot, but like, how does lobbying really work though? Like how can you compete against someone that has like much more like perceived power or resources or things like that, like Bear? Like, because they were probably there lobbying for something, right? In somewhere on that, in the Capitol.
Well, yeah, yeah, yeah. I'm sure they were there, but so what it comes down to is ROI, return on investment.
Return on investment. Mm-hmm.
What is that representative going to invest in? And usually right now today, they're investing in Bayer because Bayer's like, okay. So let me give you a little bit of backstory of what I learned. That when you the we think the politician is there and like representing us and spending all this time, like, putting their voice for us, and like spending time in Congress and that kind of stuff. Something like 3/5 of their time is spent at a desk with a phone, calling people to ask them to contribute to their campaign, their next upcoming campaign. And the other time is spent at like dinners and breakfasts and lunches with contributors, to sit there to be like, hey, haha, yeah, give us money and this. So when you start to understand that 3/5 of your, like Mazie Hirono, right, our representative here, our senator, his time is spent actually calling people and saying, hey, what's up, it's Mazie, yeah, so you gonna kick down for me this year? I could really use a contribution, I'm doing all these great things. 3/5 of her time is spent scrounging for money, and only 2/5 is spent like reading policy or like legislating. And it's actually, we're paying them to reelect themselves. So when I learned that, that's just backstory. When I learned that, I learned, okay, ROI, return on investment. What does this candidate need a return on? If they're investing all this time calling people and saying, hey, yeah, I need your money, or I need your whatever. If we can come to them and we can say, hey, look, us and all of our 10,000 members across the state would love to vote for you if you could do this. And now you have this return on investment, that if they invest in you and they actually put your bill forward, and they actually start to put this on a national policy where it's like, okay, like, we want Farm Apprentice mentorship approved. And when you vote for this, all these young millennial people will recognize that, and they will vote for you. And how do you package and deliver that to them? Or in the case of Bayer, they come in and they say, oh, well, we want this, and then guaranteed we'll get you $100,000 in campaign contributions. Because we have this network and we have this money and we have access to the printing press, or like the insiders who do. And sure, we can get you reelected.
and they give them money. So it's all about return on investment. Why is that? It's special favors to the nth degree. They always say, "Oh, we want to eliminate special favors." No, this is like the epitome of special favors. So how do you get that special favor to you? What are you going to give them back? How are you going to make that because it's more than just a politician, it's their staffers, it's the whole office. It's then once you get one office to go and embrace one bill, now you got to get support, and you got to get bilateral support, meaning you got to go talk to all the parties that are hanging out there and get them all on board. And they usually want to have these divide and conquer, I'm red, you're blue faction, like I won't vote for your stuff because your guy's a dick and you're all guys a dick too, and like it's a bunch of dick wars versus like coming and being like, okay, my people need farm apprentice mentorship, and when I support that, I'm going to get so many people behind me because now we're going to switch to an agrarian culture where it's not primitive, but it's like sophisticated agrarianism along the lines of like Korea.
What's the definition of agrarianism, and what are there any cultures in the past that were considered that?
Agrarian?
Yeah.
All cultures were agrarian. We're not today because we import everything. The world's our slave growing everything. Like we talked about the dollars being printed. You know, but an agrarian culture just means based on agriculture. Like what is the backbone of your culture? It's like right now, backbone of America, we're a warrior culture. What we do is we go around the world, we train the best soldiers, we have the best military in the world, we spend the most money on it, and we go and instead of growing our resources, we bring our bad boys in through the night, parachute them in, and they freaking take it. And if they don't take it through military force directly that way, we take it through the trade wars and these sanctions that we place upon people, where we say, oh, well, you want oil. Well, what are you going to give us for dollars? And then if they don't trade in dollars, that's when we send in the military. But we basically grind them down to say, well, we'd really like 10 million microwaves for like $5. Or for 10 barrels of oil, or whatever. Like we make the rules, and if they play, and so we grind the world in this way.
I guess it just makes me curious of like wanting to follow the rabbit hole like a little bit deeper, and in like how this system, I guess we've kind of talked about it in previous episodes, but how this has become the reality that we're facing.
Well, a lot of it is complacency. The citizens don't care. Like they just sit around. They don't know. They don't care. But then also, how did we get all that complacent? Is these same guys who make these rules took over our education systems. Like in the 70s, they created the Department of Education. And instead of people, it became this curriculum that was passed down that was like these standards and these tests and these things that then you didn't have the economic freedom where it's like, you didn't learn about this in economics class in high school, right? Like no one like looks at the world like, okay, well, why is America in charge? Okay, we're a militaristic empire. What is like these like looking at it like instead they're like, oh, da da da.
I did have a finance class in college. It was like an engineering finance class, and I asked the teacher about the Federal Reserve, and that's kind of when I started really going deep in that realm of how they just like print money and that stuff. And he was just like not interested in answering any sort of questions that had to do with the Federal Reserve, but I just thought it was interesting, if you're teaching about finance, where does that money come from?
Yeah, well, I mean, this comes down to like Logan's thing of where he's saying like there's this web of control, and that these folks are actually like what do you like like in the club. And I don't know if the university professors and stuff, because it is like you do take some oaths and have weird things like if you look at when you graduated from school, you ever notice you had a mason's cap on, a mason's mortarboard cap, and then you wore a gown, and it's black like for Saturn, and then when you reach for your diploma, you reach with your left hand and you cross over to shake the guy's hand and like make this cross in front of you and there's this whole ritual that everyone does.
Are you saying that like these Masonic occult traditions are almost like subconsciously being passed through the systems, even if we're not really like aware of them?
Yeah, yeah. Just like when people celebrate Christmas and they're not really sure of why and what, but they just do it and it feels good, and it's just like the graduating from high school is a very specific procedure you go through that looks uncannily like Masonic rituals. And so similar to this, like if you're going and you're teaching as a college professor and you're in this system, maybe subconsciously somehow you can't discuss the Federal Reserve or whatever. Like you're bound by some oath, or who knows the depth and pervasiveness of, or for some reason they're just adverse to it. But you gotta question, why would you be adverse to something like that?
Especially if your whole life is based on like finance and money, you know what I mean? Like, and eventually you'd stumble upon, well, where does it come from? Who controls it? But I guess not. Maybe, maybe that's not the case for everybody. I called into I pitched our podcast
To who?
to another podcast.
Oh yeah,
It's called The Pitch.
the pitch.
Have you ever heard it?
No.
It's a podcast that real startups pitch to real investors with real money. That's kind of like their tagline or whatever. But it's kind of like Shark Tank, but you basically hear like an entrepreneur's pitch, and then there's like a room full of investors, and then you hear their responses, and then they either invest or they don't, and then sometimes they'll like fast forward like a year, and then they'll check back in on the company, or they'll follow it for like a time period after. So the other day, so on September 11th, they had a call in where you pitched your idea or whatever to them, and I pitched the Secret Society to them. It was only 30 seconds. It took me about 40 times to call in to get a hold of them. But yeah, every time you get them the voicemail, they said, "Hi, you've reached a pitch. We're actually not accepting voicemails right now. Please call us again." And just like called, and then eventually got through and pitched about the Secret Society and how we're asking you to partner with us and help spread like regenerative agriculture, and how to transform like fallow or toxic lands into rich, nutrient-dense environments with beneficial indigenous microorganisms. And they asked a few questions, and then they said they'll let me know. So
Cool. Was it live, like on their podcast,
it was recorded.
so we can go back to it, or no?
It wasn't like on their podcast, but they're probably gonna make a podcast out of all the people that called, because like they did it previously where it was a minute pitch, and they took like their three favorites, and then they actually played those clips on the podcast, and then they decided which one of the three that they were going to invite to be on their show to pitch to investors.
Oh, cool.
So
So we're in the queue.
yeah, we're in the queue. But it was I got really nervous, but it was fun to do it. I feel like I definitely should have probably like written it down or like practiced a little bit better of an elevator pitch. I just got really kind of nervous, but
Well, that's what we just learned in Washington D.C. It's like lobbying 101, and how to go in and like how, basically just want to gain rapport with the folks, and then, make your ask kind of thing. But it's interesting tactics. Like what we were advocating for, we didn't. I feel like this is common throughout my life, but I don't have an actual like. People are like, well, what do you need? I'm like, it's kind of vague of what I truly need.
Hmm. So being able to be more specific with what your needs are and how to like, because that's what I feel like people need, whether it's like lobbyists, talking to politicians, or especially entrepreneurs pitching to VCs or angel investors, is what do you need, and what specifically do you need, why do you need that, and where are you at right now in terms of like your yeah what you're bringing in, what your expenses are,
Yeah.
your acquisition cost for a customer, the retention rate on each customer, all those types of things I feel like are really important for, especially, But I enjoy listening to the podcast because if there's any entrepreneurs who are listening to the Microbial Secret Society, the investors ask a lot of good questions. So if anyone was ever to, need to pitch their idea or try to seek funding from other people, there's a lot of good questions that I feel like need to be answered within yourself as an entrepreneur to be able to like really be able to communicate what you're needing and why.
So listening to that podcast as a way to get inspiration, to get clarity for your own ideas. Like what questions they ask, you ask yourself those same questions.
Yeah, exactly. And yeah, I'm trying more and more to do it and put it into practice of like, there's just like, I feel like a total noob when it comes to like businesses and stuff. When I hear some of these people talk, it's just that they know their stuff like so well,
Yeah, yeah,
so well, where they're like, it's like that's like their favorite pitches is the ones where like it's like the entrepreneur and the investor don't necessarily have to agree, but like when they ask questions and they're like unshakable. They know how to like navigate the conversation and to like kind of keep getting them to ask more and more questions.
yeah, yeah. Well, so what we did was we had these things called talking points, which basically we had like four agendas we wanted to get through. Like there was four different bills that they wanted to kind of talk about, and so they would just give us these talking points where you kind of relate it to like your story to this big national story that brings in so one of the sheets that we were given was this thing called the farmer's share, which it said for like a thing like soda, it's sold for like $1.50. The farmer's share is like 6 cents. So a head of lettuce is sold for like $3. The farmer's share is like 20 cents. And it showed these things where like the farmer basically doesn't get any, and that was like the thing that was like the national policy. Like they want more less consolidation in the market or something. But so you would take your personal story of like, well, as a farmer, it's hard. I run a balance sheet and I can't grow lettuce on a small scale without working for about $2 an hour. And then here's, why, because it relates to this how little the farmer gets of the actual retail value. And then that relates to our larger policy, which I think for that one was like a safety net for farmers that, if all of a sudden we can't make it and you don't want to kill your farmers. And so it would relate like a personal story through this data into like a national policy.
Hmm.
So I felt like that's what they were teaching us to do. But really, what we were supposed to be doing in these pitches was we were supposed to be the emotional anchor.
Telling the story, because like you would be the, or whatever way they perceive you would be that micro of the macro for them. Just how like they teach you to like talk about this farmer John Blue or whatever, and he can't grow lettuce and that whole thing, and then being able to relate that to a bill that would have an effect on all different farmers across the country. It's like you being there, whoever is giving the pitch to them is they're drawing it from you in a sense, because I mean, as a farmer and stuff.
But I, yeah, and you like that emotional anchor. I think is important in its like presentation and the way it's communicated as the catalyst. Like imagine you have this great product, but the person that is the emotional anchor, that person that is the conduit between product and customer, is not presenting themselves in like this way that like it's a bottleneck in a certain sense, or like not a way that the thing can pass through. So what I'm saying in this case where I'm lobbying, I'm the emotional anchor for this whole national farmers union
Mm-hmm.
policy going up. But if I come into the meeting late, then their whole perception of like my thing is down. Like they're when later when they're thinking of that bill and that bill comes up, they're gonna think, wow, those freaking farmers are late. They suck anyway. I'll just screw them over and vote for this. Against the farmers. Versus if I come in as that emotional anchor and I'm presented well, I'm wearing like a nice suit. They can see that I'm a farmer. I tell them a real personal story about how my farm here in my regenerative practices are making a difference, and that if I don't have this thing line up that my and so when they're there voting for the bill, the picture of myself pops up in their head, and they think, oh, am I going to screw over that nice guy in the suit that had that great story about his farm and stuff? And I'm the emotional anchor. Like I'm the piece that whole data and all that. It's great, but it was unconnected until they had me, and they think of they're like, am I gonna fuck him over right now? Am I gonna push this button or that button? And that's what I'm saying. Like with all these pitches and everything is like, that's the like great product behind you, great legislation, great bill, but being that emotional anchor, that conduit that makes the pitch and makes the pitch in a way where you look like somebody that they're wanting to represent the whole project.
Mm.
And that part of it I feel is crucial in this whole thing, right? Imagine you have the same pitch but without like enthusiasm in your voice to be like, bro, check out the Microbial Secret Society. It's great. You're gonna love it. And that kind of like contagious talk of like, because this great product can be there, but if you're not pitching it, you're not being that lobbyist, that
Are
point.
are we in hour two?
We're about 9 minutes.
About 9 minutes.
Yeah.
Okay. Cause I guess I could just share it. I mean, I don't know. It's gonna be a lot of competition. But I'm thinking of trying a new value added natural farming product to test to market.
Yeah. That sounds intriguing. So you're gonna be value adding some natural farming stuff and putting it for sale in front of people.
Yeah. Um, like a fermented plant juice soda. So if you get like mineral water, like there's got to be a better way. I know that there's a better way to do it, but I've tried it with like Pellegrino water or whatever. You get like the bubbly water, and you mix a little bit of fermented plant juice, flower juice, or fruit juice, and it tastes like a carbonated soda.
Oh yeah. I've done that before. So you're gonna bottle and sell people water basically.
Uh, when you say it like that, it doesn't really make me want to do it.
I know. Isn't but that's like Pepsi and Coke are some of the biggest businesses on earth, and they essentially are selling water in plastic. They're a plastic company that sells water.
Okay, so maybe that's not the way to do it. I really don't believe in selling water. Like I don't. Like I even will bring water to people where I spray, and I don't charge them for the water because I don't think people should be charged for water.
Yeah, well, but this is like the ultimate thing of like those drinks. Like if you sold a concentrate mix in for the thing, but then they're still gonna need the sparkling water.
Yeah, and there's ways to, I guess there's ways with like CO2 and stuff where you can take a tank and you can kind of like put it in, and it will make it sparkling. And then in terms of like mineral water, there's lots of wells and stuff in say like Opie where the water just comes out and it's like mineral. It's really hot, so it needs to be cooled. So there's definitely ways to get a good source. But then when you say like, well, you're basically bottling water and selling it, and I don't know, that kind of just goes against maybe my personal beliefs. But when I tried it, I really enjoyed it, and I felt like this like zing of energy with it, and it's way better than like any soda, or it's like a probiotic natural soda, which isn't necessarily, there's really high margins in the beverage industry, as you can imagine. And I feel like there's a lot of white space, and white space is basically this like open region of, if you draw like a cross, and then you put like two different things on on each axis to compare like companies that are in the same like field. You try to find like the white space where the companies aren't, and that might be an opportunity to create like a market within, like a niche market within it. So I don't know.
Well, I think you're correct, and I think your way of analysis and analyzing them is correct. But I think that when it's looked at to be like a uh like like the bottle the soda company, it's not the product that you're putting in the soda that like matters, like the FPJ and that type of thing, which is amazing, is great, and is awesome. What it comes down to is when I see people like Kapila cracks coconuts and then put it and then wanted to offer his coconut juice for sale to people.
Uh,
What happened to him was there was like a shelf life with it.
yeah, the coconuts only last so long, like a few days or so. I mean, they start to change really quickly.
Then he had to do delivery on this stuff, like and then make sure it was in stock, pick it up, bottle it, and so what it came down to really in his business model was like labeling and the glass jars that he was using. So this container, there's a bottle of like Synergy kombucha on the table. It's just
Uh-huh.
like a big bottle, and it's a really nice, sturdy glass bottle. But I think the production is like $1 to make that for this glass. So if you're looking at what you're producing, like the water inside of it is negligible cost compared to your vessel that it comes within.
Uh-huh.
Like if you sell in jars or you start selling
Uh-huh.
in bottles, and so that becomes your ultimate like you know when you think of the business model, you got to think, okay, how can I get the glass cheaper enough, and how can I get it bottled, and how can I cleaned, or like and in Hawaii, wouldn't it be great if we just had every bottle was a standardized size, this size or that size, and that you would go, and when you're done with your bottles, you put them in a a container just like milk used to be, and then they're run through a steam cleaner, and then it goes back to the bottling company and they rebottle like they used to, like the Hilo Soda Company.
They used to like kind of like milk or something, like
Yeah, they
back
used
in the
to
day.
collect your milk containers and then power steam them, and then refill them with milk, and you get them back. Like, wouldn't it be great? Because then in an innovative idea like this, to me, that's something that's like, okay, yeah, go for it, do it, because your biggest hurdle with this is gonna be getting a a container to put it in that you feel is not gonna be adding more plastic to our
Mm-hmm.
oceans, and then and then getting it out to folks and having those supply lines. It's like you're gonna have a whole room full of glass things that you're then filling, that then you put it and then you chill and then you deliver. Like that's those are the like a formula to put inside is one thing, but to build the infrastructure to start delivering that to
Mm-hmm.
somebody, that is like where the bread and butter lies. And that's again, like a farmer's market, you can show up in bulk, you can
Well, that's it for our free episode, so join us at www.microbialsecret.org for the full episode and join the Microbial Secret Society. So may the beneficial microbes be with you. Aloha.